Okay, so if you know anything about me from my previous courses or even my blog on Pluralsight, or if you've even had a class with me before, you know that I have a huge issue with passwords. And so I always jump on my soapbox whenever I start talking about passwords because let's face it, we create online entities. We use accounts online all the time, either within our own network or outside on the internet, and everything about us is contained in these entities, and we are to protect these with passwords. And here comes my soapbox. People are so stinking lazy when it comes to creating passwords. It drives me absolutely bonkers. And by the time we get done with this module, you'll understand why I'm so passionate about this particular subject. Now, the gentleman who created WordPress, his name is Matt Mullenweg. He had this great quote, and I love it, and that is, "Love is great, but not as a password." Did you know that love is actually one of the top 20 passwords that people use with a variation at the end of it? So again, our whole goal here in this phase of gaining access is attempting to crack the password or crack a password. Now, we don't necessarily go after the big bad administrative password right away, because remember, the second phase of gaining access is escalating privileges. So we first need to see if we can find a password to gain access. Okay, so it's time to release the Kraken. Okay, so this module we're going to go through and talk about what is Kraken, meaning what is the process of cracking? Why do we do it? There's actually a good reason for doing it, as well as, obviously with anything, a bad reason for doing it. We need to understand both concepts. Then we'll go through and take a look at complexity. And I apologize ahead of time. I might stand up on my soapbox and wag my finger at you a bit. But complexity allows us gets us beyond using the traditional words or lettering for creating passwords. We'll then go through and take a look at the architecture, meaning where are passwords stored? Well, that depends on the OS, and it also depends on the infrastructure environment. And don't think that Apple's immune, because guess what? Passwords are stored on Apple's and Linux, as well as obviously Microsoft boxes. Then we'll go through and talk about the techniques that are used. There are several techniques that we can try to use to get a hold of a password on a system. Some of them are easier than others, but we'll make sure you understand each one of those. Then we'll talk about the types of attacks that we can throw at a box to try to extrapolate out those passwords. And included in those type of attacks is just the simple, hey, I'm going to guess your password. And then I'm going to take you down the road of looking at the hash. No, I'm not talking about the drug. I'm talking about hash browns. We're all going to go down to McDonald's. Now, hashes are the way that passwords are stored on a box. Obviously, if we had passwords in clear text just in a file somewhere, that would be really idiotic. Instead, we're going to store them in a way that is a little harder to see what the actual password is. But guess what? Yeah, I can eventually look at the hash and translate it into the password. So let's get cracking, folks.